What is up, guys? Today on the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show, a little bit of a different kind of show for you. We're going to dive into the 2024 class and do a rookie mock draft. So we're going to go 3 rounds. We're going deep. It's that time. We're getting into the Dynasty season where we're like, hey, who's the rookie class coming up? Where are those values at? So we're going to be diving in for you guys because we do the homework for you so you don't have to. And we know a lot of these college football players so that you can kind of start getting an idea of the trends of the class. Now, we've talked about it a lot, but now it's time to dive into it. So we're going to go to the first round now. 101, we gave to Jeff Bell just because he's the oldest and oldest goes first. So 101, Jeff Bell, who are you taking here? And just for the concepts of this, 12-team super flex, and just so you know kind of the parameters of the league. Do we want to do tight end premium, or are we going to? We'll just.
It doesn't matter.
Whatever. It doesn't matter, but especially with the tight ends in this class. But we'll just say tight end premium for the sakes of it. So go, Jeff. 101, what do you want?
Caleb Williams, quarterback USC. I think that that's going to be the unanimous selection. I think that we've already got teams positioning themselves to have that number one pick. And especially if you do not have 2 strong quarterback options in your league, I think that you should be considering positioning yourself to walk away with Caleb Williams. If you're not going to make the playoffs, make sure you get the number one pick.
Yeah, Caleb's the clear 101 to me this year. And I know there's going to be some debate about it. There's, Drake Maye at North Carolina, I'm sure we'll get into here shortly, but Caleb is that special type of quarterback that I do think offers a little bit of rushing upside as well. There's been some debate on how athletic he is. I think he's pretty athletic, obviously coming off a rough performance against Notre Dame this last week. If you missed that, it was probably his worst collegiate performance in his career, but I still think that when you're looking at what Caleb Williams' profile is, it's pretty good. And I think he'll be the first overall pick this year.
I have to ask though, because it's gonna be asked. Would there be any consideration taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 101?
Not in Superflex, no. But I do followed up. Are there red flag teams? And I'm thinking of one in particular that's we've already kind of seen ruin a young quarterback. Are there red flag teams that if Caleb Williams were to end up on, that could potentially open up that question on Marvin Harrison Jr. or maybe on Drake Maye, depending on landing spot?
I have always been they'll build around him type of team. I think we've seen certainly Joe Burrow comes to mind as a guy that kind of flipped the script on what was a bad franchise and it kind of turned it on its head. He's been a great quarterback since coming into the league. But I also think that you can look at one in particular right back there that just makes me really, really nervous if they are the ones that get Caleb Williams, which a lot of signs point to him being a Chicago Bear. And so, I probably don't consider, I probably just say, I'm going to trust the talent. I'm going to trust the quarterback being above all of that, but I've done that and I'm eating that right now. So it's definitely, it puts it in your mind, but I still think I'd take Caleb.
Well, and there's a chance Marvin Harrison is also a Chicago Bear too. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the teams right now, every single one of those things scares me with the coaching staff that's in place. But we don't know the coaching staff yet. We don't know what kind of that looks like. I know ownership's tough, especially like Carolina's figuring that out right now with their ownership and how he's meddling into the issue. And I think that's going to hinder Bryce Young a little bit. I saw somebody make a joke where Tua was hugging Bryce Young after their game, and Tua's like, "Hang strong, kid. You'll get a McDaniels at some point." And it's like, well, I hope so. Like, I think you're hoping that they can kind of have that system that fits around him. But yeah, I think Caleb's the 101 when you're looking at it overall. I think just from the guys there, Denver, Arizona, even the Giants, New England, Minnesota, like those kind of scare me a little bit. I guess Minnesota not too much, but they're going to be good enough to get out of that sweepstakes. So, Tennessee again, like there's some questionable teams up there in that top 10 that you'd be a little bit worried about, but he's talented. He's the Superflex 101 right now as far as we go. But before we move on, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Comment below with any questions, recent trades, or thoughts on the topic.
Also, make sure to head to footballguys.com/plans to become a premium subscriber. Elite subscribers get custom Dynasty content for less than $15 monthly or $70 annually. We have the best Dynasty content in the fantasy football industry. Join today.
All right, Christian, 102. Where are you going?
This one is extremely difficult because I think the tier is Caleb, and then it's Marvin Harrison Jr. We just talked about that. There are a couple of different quarterbacks that I would consider here, But Marvin Harrison Jr., to me, I've said it on this show before. You'd have to go back quite a few episodes, but he's already a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. He's that good. I think if he were in the NFL this year, he would be producing at a very high level. He's one of these Jamar Chase level prospects. And I've kind of said that a few times. He might not be the same level of athlete as Jamar Chase, but I think when he gets to run at the combine or at Ohio State's Pro Day, we're going to see an athlete that's very similar. There are reports that he runs in the 4.3s, which is absurd for a guy as big as him. But yeah, just an elite producer, an elite receiver in terms of footwork, release package, things like that. Can win at the catch point. He's everything you want in a wide receiver, and I think he's probably locked in to be in a top 3 to 5 NFL draft pick. I want that receiver on my roster. If I'm, moving away from my running back heavy approach and drafting wide receivers, I'll go Marvin Harrison Jr. here.
Yeah, I think that's a safe pick. And I think that, when you're thinking about where he's getting valued already as a wide receiver, I mean, you put him there at the 102 and you have him as a top 7 guy. I'll ask Jeff this. If you had to trade, because I've seen a little context about this, would you trade Marvin Harrison Jr.? Let's say you had him like in a Devy league. If you guys don't know what that is, you get to have college players, or you have that 102 pick or whatever for AJ Brown. Like, who would you rather have in your roster? Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Marvin Harrison Jr. I think
Where's the cutoff? Jefferson Chase?
Yeah. I think I'm going to start out with Marvin Harrison Jr. as dynasty wide receiver 3. I think that there's enough of a gap between Jefferson Chase and then the rest of the players currently in the league that I feel comfortable slotting Marvin Harrison Jr. into that dynasty wide receiver 3 position, because I think he's the only guy with a realistic chance to become the dynasty wide receiver 1.
Okay. I'm really close with Jalen Waddle, though. Like, I feel like I understand with Hill being there. I know you don't like Waddle. Do not give me that look.
I like Waddle quite a bit, but I think that we're seeing right now he's been marginalized in that Dolphins offense. I mean, everything's flowing through Tyreek Hill. We're just not seeing the production out of Jalen Waddle right now.
Thanks for crapping on Waddle. But like I was going to say, I do think from a dynasty perspective, though, we don't know where Harrison's at yet. So if he does go to Chicago, I mean, you're still talking about Jalen Waddle being in that Miami offense. He's only 24. From a dynasty look, yeah, they're going through Hill, but at some point they're going to go through Waddle when Hill, as he ages out. So I think there is that. I do think age is kind of a misnomer when we're talking dynasty, because I think it's more of a 1.5 year window anyway. But I do think Waddle is, I can't just not say Waddle's close. But I would have Marvin Harrison Jr. pretty much at that 3-4 mark.
Yeah, that's what I have him at my wide receiver 3 as well currently. And I do want to add context, though, because I think if you go float AJ Brown out for the 102, it's a smash accept to get AJ Brown, right? But that's why we do these shows and why we add context to it. Obviously, the 102 is not set in stone right now. So that trade is why you would need a little bit extra if you're giving away AJ Brown. But if by the end of the season, if you're locked into the 102, you can probably flip that and some for AJ Brown. I think that's a decent trade depending on what the and some is. But I think overall, just bar for bar, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, and I get it. And it just goes to show you kind of the value of that top end. Like we said, there is at the 101 and 102, there is a clear, I think, tier break because there's question marks about the 103, no matter where you go. Now, I'm going to have the 103. I'm going to take Drake Maye from North Carolina. It's a safe pick. So I'll get, I think that some people think Maye is I don't want to say some people. I guess there are, I guess some people would be the right term. Think he's QB1. I don't have him at QB1. I have Caleb Williams there. But 6'4", 230, what the frame that he fits. I think that when you get into kind of the combine and we see the testing numbers there, I think that's something to look at when you think of with Drake Maye. I think there's going to be some buzz on big boards where some teams have him above Caleb. I don't think that's out of the question with them being there. But he's very pro-ready. I think he has a good frame. He has intangibles. He's looked better now that he has Devontae Walker, another wide receiver that was able to come back and play. If he continues to play, they're undefeated right now. Gets the Heisman ceremony, we could see a full rocket ship buzz for Drake Maye, kind of leading that charge there. And it would be the Bears thing to do is to draft Drake Maye, a North Carolina wide receiver, over Caleb Williams.
So that's I wanted to get into a little bit of like evaluation scout speak here, because if the Bears are moving on from Justin Fields and his issues are he shoots for the big play, he holds the ball and he's looking downfield quite a bit, and they want to move away from that, I think the logical pick is actually to go to Drake Maye. Now, That's someone who thinks Caleb Williams is borderline generational. I think he's an elite talent. But when you're looking at what their actual weaknesses are, Drake Maye is one of those guys that'll stand in there under pressure. He will deliver a football. He can make every throw. Drake Maye is a fantastic quarterback. I would not be shocked if he is a Chicago Bear, maybe with the 101, simply because of those things that I just mentioned.
Mhm.
But I also think that Drake Maye has some more issues. I think Drake Maye is getting bailed out this week because Caleb Williams had an atrocious first half. He had 3 interceptions in the first half against Notre Dame. No one was watching when Drake Maye was having also a terrible first half against Miami and kind of getting outdueled by Tyler Van Dyke. Probably not a name that we're going to talk about on this show. So I think it's worth noting that Maye is not a perfect prospect either. He's an exciting quarterback, and this is a good quarterback class, but not without flaws.
I'm excited for him. I want to see, he has the athleticism. So, no, I'm in on Drake Maye. I like him.
Could you imagine if the Bears take Drake Maye and then they took Trubisky and then they didn't take Mahomes and then Caleb turns into Mahomes 2.0? Bears fans would just be. I'm sorry, rough. Bears fans.
I mean, realistically, the wheels would kind of have to fall off Caleb Williams, I think, over the next 6 weeks for that to be a real conversation. I do think, and I could see where they're prototypically, maybe Drake Maye checks more boxes, but I think that what we've seen so far from Caleb Williams, just the creativity, it's exactly what NFL franchises are searching for right now.
I just want the comedic relief of that to happen. Like that's
I just want
like
him
the area
that's not going to ruin him because I'm going to have some 101s.
Yeah. And I think that's the point, like Christian mentioned, like we could see that, but it all comes down to who they hire as their head coach. Because if the head coach is like, no, this guy fits my system, I want Caleb Williams, they should listen to the head coach and build around that guy. But again, franchises make dumb mistakes over and over again, and they start with ownership. So that's part of it too. All right, Jeff, 104, where are you going?
I'm going to go Brock Bowers. If we're doing tight end premium. I think it's tough. I don't know that there's a running back I feel comfortable going right there. I think there's a tier of wide receivers that probably, some of it's game theory, some of it's knowing that I'm coming up in another 2 picks, and there's probably going to be a wide receiver I like quite a bit. I think Bowers is going to come right in and be right in that conversation to be the Dynasty tight end 1. I've seen enough of his career. I think he's going to be profiles to be that number 1 receiving type tight end, and so that's the direction I would go in a premium. The other thing too, consideration on some of the other quarterbacks, I've just been burnt, I feel like, with Will Levis, with Malik Willis, taking some of these guys early in the process. Like I want to see some things see where the kind of the community is coming in on the quarterback 3 in this class before I consider going that direction early in a super flex.
Did you just game theory a 3-person mock that we created? Like, what just happened right there? Like, oh, I have fictional so-and-so, so I don't need to take a wide receiver. Of course, Jeff, game theory is a mock there. No, I think Brock is the safer pick, right? Like, especially what we're doing right now. For those of you who don't know, Brock Bowers is out for surgery, so he's out for the year. So he's going to start kind of diving into, obviously the offseason work and getting himself ready for the NFL, which actually could probably do him some well. Like, you get in the weight room, he's probably going to, when he gets to the combine, we're going to see a dude that's just probably yoked out of his mind, I'd imagine, and probably going to test very well. So that's definitely going to help out the idea that he could probably get first round capital, which he's projected, obviously, but maybe shoot him up a little higher there. What do you think about the pick, Christian?
He's my Dynasty tight end 3 as of right now. And so I think when you talk about the 2 skill positions, non-quarterbacks that we've taken, that's 2 potential top 3 Dynasty assets from the moment they step foot on a field. Now, I know people are going to get into their feelings about Kyle Pitts and how that kind of burned them, but Kyle Pitts also 1,000-yard season as a rookie, kind of coming into his own over the last couple of weeks. We see the talent. We see him being healthy again. I don't think that Kyle Pitts should scare you off of Brock Bowers, and I'm just throwing that out there because I've already seen that as an argument against Brock Bowers. But in tight end premium, I think this is the smash pick right here.
Yeah, and I don't think if you draft early, you Devi, I don't think you can be safe enough to be honest with you, with the early picks. We have just seen it where like Malik Willis was going 101 for a lot of people, and you lit that pick on fire. That is a fundamental core piece, and so that's where I defer to. I just think Bowers is the safest play that also combines upside, and being a tight end premium draft gives you positional upside as well.
All right. So while Jeff talks about safety, Christian, what's your 105? What are you going there?
Jeff said everything correctly. That is 100% true. I'm going JJ McCarthy, the quarterback from Michigan, because JJ McCarthy is right in that Drake May tier. I think right now I'd probably lean him over Drake May for fantasy, simply because I think he offers more as a runner. I think that he is one of those elite processing type of guys, throws over the middle of the field, buttoned up mechanics, can throw into every window you possibly could imagine, has all of the arm talent, has the athleticism. It's a weird one because, I think, Kevin, you asked me recently, you said, who's your comp for JJ McCarthy? I really don't have a good one. And he's one of those like unique players that I think he's doing things at Michigan that are NFL qualities and NFL traits and things that you will see him do on Sundays, but that's not really translating into a comparison. So I'm excited to see where he falls in the NFL draft. I do think NFL evaluators are really going to like him. I don't think this is a Malik Willis type of situation, simply because we already see him in an NFL-like offense. We know that he can run that. I feel good about JJ McCarthy. He was in contention for me for the 104-ish if I had that pick. So
I think, as I'm wearing a Michigan shirt tonight, I struggle with the JJ just because you say unique, which is great, but it also scares the crap out of me because we've seen unique quarterback prospects before, and they don't always necessarily pan out. But I will say JJ has definitely improved his deep ball this year, and he has improved every facet of his game since his freshman year. So we've seen improvement, and that's good. Like, we talk about that a lot. Jay Stein, who works for Football Guys, he talks about that because he has an analytical profile background. He says, hey, and I'll say this, the analytics love JJ McCarthy. They really do. And so, like, if you tend to gravitate towards that kind of thinking, you're going to like JJ. But again, this goes to show you, after the first 4 picks, there's some question marks. Like, where do you go here, right? You're going to notice that some of these running backs are not going to get taken, in terms of these picks right here. So the value really does lie in maybe this quarterback class, and there is a pretty deep quarterback class, wide receiver, tight end, really, and basically wide receivers are one tight end. But any thoughts on JJ before I make my next pick, Jeff?
No, he's my quarterback 3 as well. He has been for a long time, and it's something that I was excited to hear Christian have him where he did, because it was one of those, I haven't made it too public, but I've liked. I mean, there's everything to like here. He was a high profile recruit. He's at a blue blood school. He's athletic. He's got prototype size. He's got reps. He's played in big games. Those are all things that you're looking for. He's got arm talent. So that's everything that I'm looking for when I look for a quarterback prospect.
Yep. And he's going to be 3-0 against Ohio State this year. No, I'm not going to put that out there. All right. So I'm going to go with the next pick at 106. I'm going to take a wide receiver, Malik Nabers, wide receiver out of LSU, 6', 200. If you don't know who he is, 52 catches this on the season so far, 860 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he finally had those touchdowns back. Quarterback for LSU, AJ Daniels, is actually having a pretty good year. He actually bounced back, and you see Malik Nabers kind of being the benefactor of that. I think Nabers, we've talked about him. I think Jeff talked about him a few weeks ago, and we highlighted him as probably, when we're looking at a wide receiver for fantasy purposes, he fits in a lot of systems. He can do it all. And I think that he kind of is versatile inside out. He's that 6', 200 that we've been seeing, just this prototypical wide receiver kind of produce for you. I think he creates separation. He's athletic, can get yards after the catch. He's currently my wide receiver 2 in the class and my big board that I write for Football Guys. So I'm going to stick with my big board here. But yeah, Malik Nabers, to me, he stands out. And he can. I think that he's right there. He's not in the tier with Marvin Harrison Jr., but if he finds himself on a roster that highlights his strengths, man, he could go pretty far in fantasy in terms of that top 24 asset already.
Yeah, I think he's already a top 24 asset. He's one. So LSU wide receivers scare me for good reason. We've had some hits, we've had some misses over the last couple of years, but Nabers to me is one of those guys that, because of that versatility that you just talked about, he's safe, and really he's one of those wide receivers that I think is kind of scheme proof, where if you need him to be a field stretching player, maybe he's not a fantasy asset right away, but maybe he plays that role and then he kind of can also be a possession type of guy down the road. I think that's one thing, for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we kind of talked about as a top 12 asset right away or close to it. A lot of people had him there. He wasn't necessarily that. He wasn't maybe as versatile as a guy like Nabers. So I have Nabers up around like wide receiver 18 to 20 right now in Dynasty, and I think he only has an opportunity to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about him a couple weeks ago, how his game profiles to what you were looking for in a fantasy wide receiver. So I think that's a good selection there.
Yeah, and just to kind of give you guys some premium stats real quick, he's taken 48% of the snaps from the slot, 52 out wide. So he does it all. Like, he's very versatile when you see him that there. And I love that he only has basically 2 drops on the year, and that came early in the season. So we're seeing him be able to do that, and that versatility is important. So, like, would you take Nabers over Jordan Addison?
Yeah.
Because I'm leaning that way. I think I would take Nabers over Jordan Addison.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that. You sound like my wife. All right, Jeff, what do you want at the 107? Where are we going?
And go Troy Franklin from Oregon.
Ooh,
wide receiver from Oregon.
Son of a gun.
Yeah, no, I think he's got prototype size, 6'3". He's a little bit underweight, but I think the speed is there. We've seen him make plays on balls downfield. He can stretch the field vertically. He can work with the ball after the catch and be involved in the underneath game. So I think I don't know. I look at some of the other ones. I think there's a little bit of limitations on maybe some of the other players, like role limitations, whereas Franklin, I think, is that type of guy that can move through formation, that can be that focal point of an offense.
Yeah, love this pick. Kevin, shout out Kevin for being first on Troy Franklin, or like 25th or something like that. I'm not sure, but pretty early on Troy Franklin, and got my eyes on him and Dante Thornton when he was out at Oregon. Franklin's a good player, and he's produced this year. I think that was the one missing piece. He produced a little bit last year, but we needed to see a little bit more production. That Oregon offense revolves through him and Bucky Irving at running back. So it's been a good year for them. I think Franklin, I put out a tweet a while ago that I think he's a first round pick. Now I stand by the fact that I believe that he should be a first round pick, but I understand why maybe he's like a top 50 to top 75 pick, and that's still going to be good for fantasy.
Yeah.
I think
you guys,
he should be.
Yeah.
I get nervous.
I think that this wide receiver class, because people at the back end are so stupid, right? Teams at the back end, they make these weird, like they reach on some of these wide receivers, and I'm like,
they're
why
the best run teams in the league, Kevin.
No, you know what I'm talking about. Stop it. Like where we get like Sky Moore in the first. Did Sky Moore? Did he go in the first?
Second.
He was
late second. So that's right. So like you get some of these guys that, like, these teams that take some of these other wide receivers because they more maybe fit their profile and their scheme a little bit better. They think, where Franklin is like, hey, he's a wide guy. He's going to play out wide. That's kind of going to be his position, where it's like, well, where do we plug him in at? No, we'll just take this other little guy, put him in the slot, where Franklin could be a dude. And I think that's what I'm talking about a little bit. I know they're the best run to organizations in the league. I would counter that a little bit, because the Cowboys are usually picking from 20 to 30. And let me tell you what, as a Cowboy fan, they are not the best run organization out there. All right. Where are you going next, Christian?
Xavier Worthy from Texas. We highlighted him, I think, we talked about him on the show. I get it mixed up, because every time we talk about the wide receivers, we talk about their strengths and weaknesses. Worthy's a different kind of guy. He's a separating type of guy. He has quick twitch. He can do things after the catch. I think teams are going to be a little distressed about his hands, and I think rightfully so. He's had some concentration drops. He's had some contested catch drops. I'm not as worried about that. If he can get open and he can, catch the ball a majority of the time, I think NFL teams are going to be super into that. He's one of these guys that I think he's also scheme proof, because he doesn't take a whole lot of snaps from the slot, because he's a fast guy that can beat guys off the line of scrimmage. You can't really press him because you can't get hands on him. But I think if you bump him into the slot, he's effective there as well, because he is a smaller guy, probably 165 pounds soaking wet, but that's okay. I'll take that guy. I've seen that profile work now, so I'll take him here.
Yeah, I've been flirting with putting Xavier like wide receiver 2, top 5 super flex pick. So like I like this. Like if you like Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy is souped up Zay Flowers, like where I think he's more refined too. Like I think that he can kind of do more. And I love that pick. I think Xavier Worthy sitting here. But again, this just shows you this is 3 straight wide receivers taken where the value is at in those super flex leagues there. Anything on Xavier, Jeff?
No, but I mean, I think you guys summed it up perfectly. His ability to work vertically is I like that quite a bit, and he's another one of these guys like Franklin that he's used the ball in his hands. But I'm kind of curious. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. I think is probably in a tier by himself at wide receiver. How deep do you think that second tier of wide receivers is? I assume that you've got all these guys that we're talking about kind of grouped together in that second tier.
I think there's 6 dudes.
It's about where I am.
In the second tier.
In the second tier, you mean like not including Marv?
Yeah,
Not
so like not including Marv, I have 6 guys in that second tier that I would be comfortable drafting.
Around 6, maybe even 7, depending on the day.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. All right, let me take another one. Wide receiver Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. I'm taking Emeka here. He has not had a good year this year. He's been a little bit banged up. But he's still a blue chip guy. And I think that when you look at him from an analytical profile, I know he fits everything there. Weighted dominator rating, he has that. He's got a big frame. I think that sometimes they mix him in with JSN, but Egbuka is 6'1", 205. Like we're not talking about a small guy here. And I think that there are times where he's very physical. I think he's real balanced after run after catch. Like he has that ability. He can just he just makes plays, but it's nothing like flashy. So the thing about Egbuka, I don't think that he ever does anything with flash. And this year, especially, I know Ohio State fans, Jeff probably attests to this since he's an Ohio State fan. They're a little upset with him, like what his production profile has been. But I feel like Emeka is one of these players that, like, if he goes, he's probably going to just be a slot guy. He's very good against zone coverage. Like, I love watching him play and his ability to kind of know where the open spaces are. Like, that's Emeka's thing. So when you watch him, you know what he fits well in? NFL, because some teams just going to put him in slot and this guy's just going to get open. Third down, where are we going to throw it to? Emeka. Like, I think that he could be like a team's Tyler Lockett almost. But again, Tyler's, obviously smaller. But I think Emeka can fit that role. Like, hey, where are you going to go to this guy? Where we're talking like, oh, Emeka had 12 targets again. And that's kind of the guy with Emeka. I don't think he's a flashy pick. I don't think he's like, oh my gosh, he's going to be that guy in my rookie draft where I felt like super excited about. But I do think he's a solid pick. I think that Emeka is one of those guys who's going to earn targets at the next level.
I think he's a souped up version of Amon-Ra St. Brown coming into the draft. And the production, I put the production more on the quarterback right now than him.
Yeah.
And, he was hurt last week out of that game. But I think that just in general, I think that we've seen some rocky stretches from, and Kyle's dad's going to get mad at me, but we've seen some stretches from Kyle McCord that have been a little bit rocky to start games before he settled in.
Yeah, going back to the Notre Dame game, though, I mean, he was huge on that final drive. And just you saw what he could be, running crossers over the middle or finding the space in the middle of the field. Like, that's the type of player that he can be. I think souped up Amon-Ra is a good comp, but there's some college seedy a little bit where like he can be a possession guy. I don't know that he's going to stretch vertically a ton. I think he's got the athleticism to do it, but I don't think that's really his game. But good player, amazing. We're talking about the depth of this wide receiver class. Like, amazing that he's available here at 109, and probably in some drafts when we get down to it, he's going to be the 105, 106.
It's me next.
Rome
Odunze from Washington
at 110. Okay.
At 110 is my pick. I think we've seen physicality. We saw big plays against Oregon. I think he's another guy who plays the ball well downfield. I think he profiles to be that primary X receiver that you're looking for, really, to run an NFL offense through. And so I like him quite a bit. I think he's on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He is an excellent athlete and an excellent, just skilled wide receiver.
Good pick. I was low on Rome heading into this year, and I think some of that size speed stuff doesn't necessarily always translate to separation. I think he could definitely use some refinement in his routes, but like, you watch what he did against Oregon this last week, and you're like, oh, okay, does it matter? Like, if he's George Pickens, are we happy about that? I think probably. That being said, I think there are a couple different George Pickens in this draft. One that's probably going to go here pretty soon too, but yeah, good pick. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. Some people are calling him a potential top 10 pick and the wide receiver 2 off the board. So good pick here at 110.
Yeah, no, I like this pick. I think, the thing that's going to scare people from an analytical perspective for Rome is a fourth year guy, the production window. Where was the production window at? And there's some interesting comps for him out there in terms of that. So like Corey Coleman, I think I got thrown out there for the production window, some of this other stuff. And so analytics not going to like Rome. I know that, but I do think, I think I was lower on him, and I owe you an apology. Like, I think Rome out there, Rome's brother came and yelled at me in my DMs one day, so I'm going to email him back, or DM him back. I think Rome is a first round kind of in terms of super flex drafts right now. I think you had value in here. All right, where we get another wide receiver, Christian? Where are we going now?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I still have no clue, and I've been sitting here thinking about this pick since I made my last one because I knew what was gonna happen. I think, I think I've got to take Keon Coleman simply because I think that's the safe pick here. I will say, like, there are some running backs that I'm certainly considering. I think this is the range where if you need a running back, this is where you should be, is like the back end of the first, early second. Sure, I think we will see some running backs pushed up, but Keon Coleman's one of those guys. Just go, everyone listening, if you haven't seen the catch from this weekend, the one-handed catch over the middle, that's just a perfect encapsulation of what Keon Coleman is. He's a basketball player. He played basketball at Michigan State. He transferred from Michigan State over to Florida State and has really helped that offense kind of go. I worry about his separation. I worry about his route running. I worry about all of those things. But I just mentioned that there are multiple George Pickens in this draft, and I think that he can certainly develop those things. Him and Romer in that same tier of like, yeah, that's a crazy athlete that can go win at the catch point. Sure, I'll take a shot on that.
Has seeing Jahmyr Gibbs made you gun shy at all on touching running backs until you kind of have a good idea on their landing spot and situation?
I think seeing NFL running back deployment has made me gun shy on NFL running backs, just in general, not necessarily Gibbs, but just I think we've seen the devalue of running backs in Dynasty and in the NFL, respectively, and I think that is going to make those running backs are going to be a lot more valuable here at the back of the first, because I think certainly we'll see, say TreVeyon Henderson goes to the Eagles. Say they make a luxury pick, they take TreVeyon Henderson. I'm pretty sure I'll take TreVeyon Henderson ahead of Keon Coleman. Like I'm like 95% sure I will do that. That being said, I think that I would like to see it, and even then, I can't really risk a top 5 pick on a running back at this moment unless it's Bijan Robinson, and I don't think there's one of those in this class.
Yeah. Well, I could just talk about it because I had the 112, and I'm going to take TreVeyon Henderson from Ohio State. And partly just because I kind of want to keep this conversation going about running backs, but also like at that 112, I mean, realistically, if you want to take a running back, there's probably 6 guys you could take right here. Like if you really wanted to. Quarterback wise, I still like Quinn Ewers. I still like some of these other guys out there, but I'll take TreVeyon Henderson if he can be that guy. He didn't play. He got injured and didn't play in his last game, but against Notre Dame, he had over 100 yards, and you did see you see that he is a good running back. Is he a great running back? I think that's the question. And I think when you look at it, let's just say he did. We can make hypotheticals up. Jeff made a hypothetical up earlier. Yeah, he went to the Eagles and he could be that guy, or wherever like you think he's that. Then you're okay. You're like, hey, yeah, he's gonna get used and have that usage there. But I don't see why, like in Dynasty, unless you have multiple picks where you're a contender and you got a couple in the top 7 or 8. There's no way I'm touching a running back unless I am ready to go. Like, give me that guy, plug him in. And even then, like, I'm sure some people did that with Gibbs this year. And now they're like, man, I'm sitting here. Maybe it'll pan out with Monty getting injured and maybe Gibbs coming back and they're going to have that late round stuff or in the season. But yeah, I think it's tough with that. So I'll take TreVeyon Henderson here based on talent, get a running back on the board before we get out of here on the first round. But that's how I look at running backs. But again, they're volatile, right? Like, look at that. I want to, I won a fantasy matchup and I started Jerome Ford, and I don't know, I have somebody else this weekend, and it's ridiculous that I'm winning, with Jerome Ford out there. But you know what? That's the reality of the position right now.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jeff?
No, I think he profiles well, better than anybody else in this class to fit into what a modern NFL running back is looking for. I mean, watching him up close, I'm concerned about health because availability has become a little bit of a question over the last couple of years. And so if you're not available in college, are you going to be available in the NFL? But that's my biggest knock on him right now.
Well, that's why I said the Eagles, DeAndre Swift. There are some similarities though. When you look at, I think he's a good pass catcher. I think he does a lot of things well. I don't think his pass blocking is very good, but from a running back perspective, he's got, would you say he's a comparable prospect to Breece Hall without, the durability?
I would like to see a little bit more, I think, to put him in Breece Hall, and I would like to see testing probably to put him in the Breece Hall territory.
Okay. I agree. It was a hypothetical. I don't want people to think that I said that. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I'm not putting him in that category. It hurts. I'm not putting him there yet. I think he is a complete back though. And in this class, when you're looking at complete guys that can catch and run and kind of fit a system, and I think TreVeyon can fit a lot of systems too. I think he stands out in that range. And he's got the size, he has the speed, he's going to probably test very well. So if I'm looking at a running back where I feel like the most comfortable with outside of injury, which I know staying healthy is important, but just from a profile perspective, I really like TreVeyon. I think that I think there's a concern that he might go back to school. I don't, does TreVeyon come out after this year? I think, they should, but
I'd be shocked to see him go back.
Can he make more money in NIL?
Money.
Maybe.
Well, I don't know. Not if he doesn't get on the field. The Ohio State fans ain't ponying up any money if he doesn't get on the field out there.
That's fair. Yeah.
All right. So let's go through the first round, and then we'll get out of here on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, though, we're going to do second and third round. And if you're watching on YouTube, pop over to the podcast. So here's what the first round was. 101, Caleb Williams. 102, Marvin Harrison Jr. 103 was Drake Maye. 104 is Brock Bowers. 105 is J.J. McCarthy. 106 is Malik Nabers. 107 is Troy Franklin. 108, Xavier Worthy. 109 is Emeka Egbuka. 110 is Odunze. 111, Keon Coleman. And then the 112 is TreVeyon Henderson. Christian, any final thoughts on this first round?
It's a great wide receiver class. And I think that while doing mocks this early can present issues down the road, I think we've highlighted a few of those. Malik Willis is, one of those issues. I think the one thing that is going to remain constant throughout this entire process is the NFL loves these wide receivers. This wide receiver class is pretty legit. Draft wide receivers if you're doing early rookie drafts. All right. And the full version of this show and every show can be found over on the podcast. Like Kevin said, we are about to do a second. We're going to continue this mock draft. So if you're interested and you're like, wow, I know all those names, I'm the best Dynasty player ever, but I don't know the rest of the, second and third round potentially, then you should head over to the podcast. But that can be found Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe over there.